Hey, this is Michael Romeo, and you're watching Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I am Rodrigo, and my guest today is one of my all-time favorite guitar players, Mr. Michael Romeo. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, man, thank you, dude.
Yeah, let's talk about your upcoming album, War of the Worlds Part 2. It comes out on March 25, and I imagine you must have quite a sense of accomplishment with this release, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, anything, doing a solo thing or the band. I mean, a lot of work goes into this stuff. It takes some time, a lot of work. But then when it's all done, you can be like, oh, okay. And then it's on to the next one, So,
Yeah,
but yeah, man, I mean, definitely happy with the record.
concluding the saga, right, that
Yeah.
started a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask about the one lineup change. Dino Jelusick is the singer on part two, replacing Rick Castellano, who sang on
hmm
part one. What motivated the change? I mean, was that always the plan or not?
I mean, I knew for part two, I wanted to try something different. And
Mhm,
like, the first one, it was a friend of mine, Rick, an unknown guy, and I thought it'd be cool, just have an unknown guy, give him a chance, have him, kind of come into the picture, and it was
mhm,
cool. For part two, I was like, yeah, man, maybe I'll try something different. I even remember kind of early on thinking, well, maybe I'll like have a different singer on every song,
uh-huh,
maybe this kind of thing. And I'm like, nah, I'd rather keep it all the same, kind of thing. And then there was a while I was just trying to think of other people I could work with, and then I was talking to Simone Milleroni, who does, helps me with all the recording and the mixing and stuff.
yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, dude, I'll just call my buddy Dino. He would love to do it." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I knew a little bit about Dino, and so he put us in touch, and talked to him, and he was like, "Dude, I'd love to do it. It would be cool." And then we're sending some files back, and he's sending some vocals back. I'm like, "Oh yeah, dude, fucking perfect, man, perfect."
Yeah.
So it worked out great.
Yeah, I know Dino's material, and it's usually more on the melodic side, but on the album, he has a grit in his voice that I hadn't heard before. I mean, did you ask him to sing that
No,
way or?
he wanted, yeah, I mean, whenever I'm working with someone else, I mean, I'll have the basic idea, like maybe I'll have the melody and the lyric thing,
Right.
and then it's like I'll just hand it off. It's like, well, here's my basic skeleton of the idea,
Mhm.
but like maybe the melody you're hearing it going up as opposed to down or whatever I did, and so usually I'm just like, hey man, make it your own thing, embellish it, you know,
Right.
make it personal to you. And yeah, I think early on he was like, "Oh man, this stuff's I want to sing a little more, a little more heavy." On I was like, "Hey, that's I'm not gonna say anything about that." So it's cool. I mean, it fits the material. I
Yeah.
think it fits. I mean, the stuff's kind of heavy, and I think yeah, like again, I think he did an awesome job.
Yeah, and it's great you mentioned Simone because I spoke with him. I think April 2020 actually, and he mentioned he was already working with the album, so it's
Mm.
been a long time coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing. I mean, the schedule of this whole thing got all messed up. I mean, I kind of started looking to finish the part two because most of it was written. When I did
Mhm.
part one, most of part two was written. There was a couple songs I was a little short. I didn't realize, so I had to kind of put a couple things together.
Yeah.
And the band had a tour coming up. Symphony X, we had a tour coming up. I think it was like April 2020.
Mhm.
So I'm like, all right, in the beginning of the year, I could probably get this part two finished up, or at least a real lot of it. And then, Symphony X, we're back on tour and, talking about a new record and everything's going to be great. And
Yeah.
then you know what happened. So just
Yeah.
everything, the studios were shut down, and just everything went just went off schedule. So
Yeah.
luckily most of it was done, and it's just been kind of sitting here for like about a year. It's been done for about a year, and and some of it's like, yeah, waiting to see what's happening, and the label trying to find the best time for release. So it's kind of hard to
Yeah. Plan
schedule
anything.
any. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, it really is, because you just don't know. It's like we have a tour coming up here in May.
In May. Yeah.
I mean, we're all psyched. It's like because we haven't played together in 2 years, so it's like, oh man. and I'm like hoping that no
Fing-
other shit happens,
Crossing fingers. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And but completing the lineup, of course, you have JD on bass and John Macaluso on drums. And I speak with Macaluso very often on Facebook.
Yeah.
He told me to say hi and that he's particularly happy with Alien Death Rays, one of the bonus.
Yeah,
he did a stellar job. Yeah,
and I wrote that for him.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, I little bits and pieces, and it was like a longer thing, and it's definitely kind of instrumental and a little bit of the orchestra, and then it kind of just goes into this, vamp, just this kind of groove, and it's like, all right, let me extend that, and I told Mac, I'm like, yeah, dude, just, do your thing, fill that all in and have fun, and so yeah, he was all about it. He's a character, man. He's a fucking character.
Very much so. Yeah. And I like how there's some callbacks to the melodies and themes of part one, and also on the cover, like it's a variation of the same theme of the first one. So you establish a visual and sonic identity to a point where each album stands on its own, but complement each other quite well, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that was the thing, like I was just saying, it's like most of the stuff was written at the same time.
Yeah.
Like when I first decided, it's like, okay, I'll do a solo record. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this whole 2-part, I didn't even know. I was like, all right, let me just start writing. And then I'm writing, and, I get a little ridiculous sometimes, and I just keep going and going. And then a couple months later, I'm like, okay, let me take a look at what I have. And of course, there's a ton of stuff. And it's like, all right, this is just too much. So I said, all right, I'll put half aside and concentrate on that for part one. And then sometime in the future, come back and get to part two stuff. So yeah, a lot of those themes, and that's why it wasn't going to be like, oh, this is going to be something totally different. It's like, yeah, all those themes are embedded in there, and this whole sound of the thing. So yeah, with the album cover too, it's like, okay, it's kind of the same work. So I didn't want to, put something totally different.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And we actually spoke in 2018 when the first album came out, and we discussed the song differences and how we're divided in terms of religion, politics, and pretty much any issue. 4 years later, I think it's gotten even worse, right?
Oh,
nothing has improved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, there's even, I'm not. I'll just say, I'm not like super political guy or super, I'm just, I just do my thing, and I try to be a good guy and that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some of that, and even with some of these lyrics, not really getting into it, but maybe commentary on some of it. Even like the song "Divide and Conquer," because the whole War of the Worlds thing with a lot of the lyric stuff is them versus us, right?
Yeah.
It's them against us, and I was like, yeah, on the surface, it's like us and the aliens, and they're gonna, whatever, they're taking over and all this kind of thing. But I didn't want all the lyrics to be like cheesy flying saucers and all this, except the Death Ray for Macaluso. He can have that title. But yeah, it's like I wanted to kind of get a little bit more, maybe a little metaphor kind of thing happening. And so like Divide and Conquer, it's like, yeah, here come the aliens, and they got all these Death Ray or whatever, and but they're just like, oh, we don't got to do anything. Look at these guys. They're already fighting each other. It's like, oh, we'll wait it out. So yeah, there's a little of that going on. But I said, I'm not preaching anything. I'm not, I don't want to get in, because it is, it is a mess. It kind of is a mess.
Just observation, right? Just commenting on what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me too, man, it's like, it's music. So it's like, you don't want to get all preachy, and it's enough of this shit and everything else that that's going on. So with the music, it's like, yeah, man, let's just get away from that and just have the music for enjoying the music, and not any kind of message or picking sides and all that crap. It's like, nah, I'm not interested in that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the first single, Divide and Conquer. It got an amazing video treatment. To what extent do you get involved with the creative process of the video and everything? Or is it just, you hire a company and that's it?
Honestly, I'm not a fan. I'm not crazy about the lyric video thing. I understand it's cool. It's a way to have a visual of the thing.
Yeah.
So, but when I'm writing, I'm thinking of things, and hopefully that music is kind of drawing that picture to people. It's like, oh, here's
Yeah.
this thing, and I can see this, whatever it is. Um, but like as far as me, like being involved, the label will hire a guy, and I'll just say this guy Wayne, I mean, freaking amazing job he
Yeah.
does, a great
Yeah.
job. And I think all I said was like, yeah, can it have a little, I was like, yeah, do your thing, but can we have a little bit of this, maybe the real kind of nod to like, the War of the Worlds thing. So I said, maybe, a tripod or just some kind of alien thing, or maybe like a Giger
Yeah. Vibe.
visual thing here and
Yeah.
there. Don't go
Yeah.
like, it's divide and conquer, and like, there's a picture of ducks in a pond with flowers. It's like, you can't do that.
That'll be fun.
That ain't gonna work. No,
Yeah.
that ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
But no, he just went and did it, and I was like, oh my God, those tripods, that's badass as hell.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. And
That's cool, man.
yeah, and Metamorphosis, the second single, I think it has something that is in short supply for me in music these days, certainly in Prague. I mean, it's very catchy, but it's more complicated than one might think, with all the syncopation in the chorus and everything. So it's deceptively complicated, right? It sounds simple, but it's not.
And that's definitely for me, even writing that, it was like a nod to Rush. Definitely
Oh,
not. There's some Rush things happening in that, and that's
they're
on
champions of
purpose.
that, right? Yeah.
That's exactly just exactly what you said. Like you won't even know that you're in 7 or whatever. You won't even know it, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's in 7. Oh shit. I
Yeah.
mean, and it feels natural. And it feels smooth. So I mean,
Yeah.
and I always loved that about Rush. I mean, I love Rush anyway, but
Yeah.
that was, I think, what a great strength they had, where you could have the proggy stuff, and still the song was great and the chorus was great, and you weren't even, you might be aware, oh, there's something happening with the time, but it wasn't like, oh man, this is all like awkward and um, disjointed. It
Yeah.
always felt cohesive, and it felt right. It just felt right, like nothing was forced.
Yeah.
So yeah, Metamorphosis, same thing. It was like, okay, yeah, man, love Rush, and I like that bit cool, JD, the cool bass groove, and there's a little bit of, the guitar playing a line, but then there's like some clean strats underneath. I mean, that's a little bit
Yeah.
Rush-like, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Funny you mentioned about Rush, because I was learning the camera eye yesterday, and I
Oh,
noticed,
yeah.
like, I suggested to my teacher, I said, it's a simple song. It's just long but simple. And then when you get down to it, it's not that simple.
No,
it's
it's not.
tricky. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of their stuff, it is, I mean,
There's tricks here and there. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they're
Yeah.
not freaking serious, man. They were
Yeah.
some great freaking songs, some great records, and always good, and always,
Yeah.
if you're like picking it apart and you're learning it, it's like, oh man, that is.
Yeah.
But when you're listening, it's like, oh, this is cool, man. It's not catching me off guard, really.
Exactly. Yeah. And one thing I noticed as well is that pretty much all your influences are on these two albums. On Parasite, for example, there's a riff which sounds like a homage to Slayer. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up with all that stuff, man. I
Yeah.
mean, there's always going to be a little bit of Sabbath, the
Oh,
Iommi riff. There's always going to be a little Sabbath. There's always going to be some Priest or Maiden and Metallica or Megadeth and
yeah.
Slayer, but then the other side too, there's going to be a lot of Rush,
Yeah.
Kansas, yes, ELP, and some of those, more progressive bands. And then of course, like all the classical stuff I like, and all the film music, John Williams. I mean, I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, it's like trying to cram it, electronic stuff. I mean, I hear stuff, it's like, oh, that's cool. I like that. I'm going to try to, hopefully
Channel that. Yeah. Somehow.
and hopefully put it into some kind of thing that makes sense. And,
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how there's a break from all the heaviness halfway through with the ballad just before the dawn kicks in. Was it intentional to place it kind of halfway through the album or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a normal thing.
Yeah.
Like you have all this heavy stuff and it's bombastic, and
Recess.
then like you need like you need a friggin', a palate cleanser. You need a little release in the middle there, and
Absolutely. Yeah. And you use the 7-string guitar on hybrids. Did you pick up that guitar because you thought the song asked for it? Or did you say, you know what, let's see what would come up if I use the 7-string? What was the thought process there?
I think it was this song Destroyer that
Oh,
I knew.
Destroyer.
That was one. Well, I mean, it's on hybrids too a little bit. Yeah, but
Okay.
that was the one. Because those were the songs that like that I kind of added later. I mean, I had a lot of those pieces,
Hmm.
but they weren't finished. So like we were saying before, it's like okay, I had to kind of put together a couple other ones because the time was a little short. So Destroyer was one. I mean, I had a lot of those riffs, and they were on the six string and the demo. The stuff I was working on, and I was like, man, this would be really badass if it was a little lower. And I
Hmm.
was like, well, maybe I'll just detune one of my guitars more, and then that's like, oh, that's a freaking nightmare. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do that. So I got in touch with the guys at Comparison, and I mean, they're friggin' awesome, man. They're so awesome. They're like, oh, can I try one out? And I was like, oh yeah, so they sent me one, and I'll be honest, like the first time, I'm just
Uh,
like, what the fuck note am I on? What is this note?
yeah.
It's just a different thing. I mean, whatever. A couple of days, I'm like, okay, I'm cool with this. But it
Yeah.
was the Destroyer song
Oh,
that I
nice. Yeah.
that I thought would be that's what kind of made the seven string, come into play. It was like I remember listening to the riff, and it was a six string, and it was still cool. It was still heavy, but I
Hmm.
was like, man, this would be really mean. This would be real mean and dark if it was dropped down. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then there it is.
Destroyer is like it's like the lot for me because there's a lot in
It's like
there.
what?
It's when you go into a burger shop and you go, I need the lot because there's so much in it, right?
Yeah,
It's the Middle Eastern flavor, and
yeah.
there's cello, saz, a lot of stuff in there.
And then again, yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like most of the time, if it's the orchestral stuff or even in some synths, it's like, yeah, I'll grab whatever virtual instrument or whatever kind of keyboard patch, and that's
Mm.
usually fine. Especially the orchestra stuff, I can work it where it's believable. And then that one, it's like, okay, yeah, man, I want to have some of those instruments in there, like maybe a saz or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, again, I'm like, maybe I'll just buy one. How hard can it be? And then I
Yeah.
get one, I'm like, oh shit, here we go again, trying to figure this thing out. But
Yeah.
again, if it has strings on it, I can at least get it in a short amount of time. At least I can get some
Figure it
music
out.
at. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
get some music. So yeah, the same thing with that. It was like, okay, let's throw that into the mix. And there's that middle part and there's that saz going, and it's like the texture. It's more of a texture thing, and it's
Yeah.
cool. And it's
Yeah.
more shit for down here, more toys that, my wife's like, "Yeah, did you really need that? Are you gonna use that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna use it. Of course I'm gonna
One
use it."
song, but yes, I'll use it.
She doesn't have to know that, but
Yeah.
yeah, one
Right.
part of one song. Yeah.
Right. And I noticed even with Symphony X that at some point you kind of moved away from the neoclassical style and your riffs got chunkier and heavier. I mean, what
Yeah.
motivated that change? Did you get tired of that neoclassical style or?
I mean, maybe a little bit tired. I think in the beginning with the band, um, that was something like me and Pinella
Hmm.
kind of had in common. Like, coming from a classical pianist background. And of course, and I loved all the classical stuff too, and Randy Rhoads and Ingve and all that kind of stuff. So I think in the beginning, me and Pinella, like there was that bond and there was that common ground,
Hmm.
and it was really easy. He's like, "Oh, I got this thing." It's like, "Oh yeah, that's that Bach thing." All right, cool. And then yeah, as time went on, I mean, even on those records, there was still some heavy stuff, like Sins and Shadows. I mean, that's pretty freaking heavy
Yeah,
riff.
it is. Yeah.
So yeah, and then eventually, I think with the classical stuff, like by Odyssey, maybe it's like I still like the classical stuff, but now, as I was getting older, I'm listening to different things, and maybe when I was younger, I would listen to Stravinsky, and I'd be like, "Oh man, this just sounds terrible. This is like noise." Now I listen to it, I'm like, "This is the fucking greatest thing ever," you know. So I think even that too, in terms of the classical side with the band, it was starting to go more into that epic film score a little bit too. Like, talk about John Williams and all those big epic scores and all these big movies. That kind of comes into play too. When we were
Right.
talking about that record, and it just struck me one time, I'm like, man, thinking about when I first started playing and getting a new Priest record or getting a new whatever, and there's that thing, you know? And I think once you start doing your own band and you kind of sometimes you lose some of that fire a little bit, And I remember Paradise Lost. It's like, man, I remember like when Painkiller came out, and I was like, this is freaking heavy. This is all. And then that was like my mindset. It's like, man, I got to go back to some of this just riffs and concentrating on coming up with cool riffs. Again, like Sabbath, like you hear Sabbath riff, it's like that's freaking Sabbath.
Yeah.
I think there was some of that. So yeah, as time went on, yeah, a little more heavy, and maybe the orchestral kind of style changed a little bit.
Got it.
But it's the same stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's just tweaked a little.
Yeah. And when we spoke in 2018, you mentioned that you would consider playing this material, the solo material, live, but it has to be done the right way with the orchestral sounds and all the effects.
It would be difficult, man.
Yeah.
And I think now, just from what's happened, like the band hasn't played in 2 years, and it's like the band is the priority always.
Okay.
So like once we start, man, we gotta hit it and get back. And we've been talking about a new record, so like we got to get the things rolling. But the other thing too, it's like if we're working on a Symphony X record, like I know, like we all know that that we have to play it live. So not that it's really restrictive at all, but there's a thing. It's like, okay, we can't overdo it. Where with the solo record, there's no limit, man. I mean, just Metamorphosis, for instance. It's like, all right, here's this guitar line. I'm gonna double it with the synth. Then the regular guitars are gonna come in with these runs and into the riff, and then there's another strat that comes in over that, and then there's another synth. So it's like that's like total creative freedom. You can just pack the shit on, man. You can layer it till I'm not trying to overdo it on purpose, but it's like that's kind of what I'm hearing, and I'm not thinking of any limits. Whereas the band, it's like, we can't overdo it, So, and that's the thing, like trying to do this live. I mean, you never know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right opportunity at the right time, but it would not be. I know it would be a lot of work. Yeah. I remember us trying to do the Odyssey live when it was like, all right, we're gonna do the Odyssey live, and like we didn't think about any of that shit when we were recording, and then it was like, oh my god, like how. None of us, with backing tracks, it's like, I don't want to, no, man, I want to play in real time and the music's slowing down, and I don't want to do click track thing now.
Yeah.
So then
you like, figure it out. So.
So I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll play the rehearsal. It's like, maybe I'll play this string part and Pinella's going to do this other thing and LaFont. And it took time. It took time to get it where it was like, okay, all those parts are there and it's kind of working. And like I think live, I think we pull it off. It's really close.
Yeah.
But it was it took a minute, man.
To get there, it's tough. Yeah. And in parallel with this release, you mentioned the tour that will resume in May for Symphony X with Haken as the opening act. Two amazing bands touring together. Yeah. I mean, can the fans expect something different this time, or will it be the same set list as the anniversary tour in 2019?
I don't know, because we've been talking, about like what we could do, and we're still not sure.
Okay.
I mean, we're gonna rehearse like probably a month from now or so. We'll get back together.
Okay.
And like right now, we're just throwing ideas around. Maybe we'll pull this one out. Maybe we'll do that, and So I don't even know. We got to figure it out soon, so we all know what the hell to practice. So when we get to rehearsal, not like a bunch of clowns.
Yeah, and I asked you this in 2018 as well. I mean, fans are screaming still for a DVD, maybe with V played in full or some kind of special event. Has there been any?
Does anybody even buy a DVD anymore? It's like,
or a live release of some kind, like a professional.
Maybe.
Release. Yeah.
I mean, we could do that.
Yeah.
It's just I always, I mean, I think all of us thought it's like, if we're gonna do that, man, it'd be nice to do something special. Maybe have the orchestra and you're doing the Odyssey. I mean. But I mean, a lot of these things just take money and all this, and then this whole COVID thing just totally knocked everything out of whack. And
yeah. And you mentioned the plans for a new Symphony X album. How far ahead, if at all, are you in terms of writing a new album?
Honestly, it's weird. I mean, and we've been talking a lot. I talked to Russ. I talked to LaPon yesterday. I talked to Russ like last week.
Okay.
And I think and I feel the same. It's like kind of, not that I'm not inspired, but it's harder I think just from us not doing band stuff, you
Yeah.
know, and we're spread around the country, so it's not like we can just shoot over to the rehearsal room. You know, it's kind of a, you
Yeah.
know, some logistics involved.
Yeah.
So I think all those tours being canceled and that whole headache of that, and then us not being on stage with each other for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Complicates
oh
things.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, man, let's work on a record now. And it's like, man, it doesn't even feel like we've been a band in the last 2 years because, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we all talk, you know, we all talk and we'll hang out from time to time, but like getting a rehearsal and getting it, I mean, just everything was canceled in 2021 canceled, then this canceled. It's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, you know,
It's
this is like,
disheartening. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is. And then you
Yeah.
just never know. So, I mean, every day I'll come down here, you know, and I'll try to put some riffs together and then trying to find, you know, talking about, we're bouncing a couple ideas around for themes and what we could do and where the
Hmm.
music will go and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and there's a couple things that's like, oh yeah, maybe that might be good. But
Right.
it just seems like it's taking a little longer than normal to find that thing. And
Yeah.
I know why. And I know why. And just from talking to the guys too, I can tell it's just like, just stupid things, you know, being on the bus together and goofing around and just doing stupid shit. And this is, you know, and just doing that thing. And then you're playing and the reaction from the audience. And it's like, oh yeah, man, this is, you know, this is what we do, you know, and we
Right.
love what we do. And then
Yeah.
that goes away and it's like, okay, now be really inspired and give us this great thing. And it's like, dude, I'm trying, you know,
Yeah.
it's just taking a minute.
Yeah. I'm sure the tour will sparkle that flame for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no doubt. That's what it is. We just
Yeah.
need to like,
Be on stage together and yeah.
just do band stuff, you know, just
Yeah.
be, but I mean, things are moving. I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
do have a couple ideas. And like I said, talking to the guys, yeah, I mean, we know we need to do it. It's been a long time, but there's just been so many things that have happened.
Yeah.
So,
Got it. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed, man. And I
yeah.
have a ticket for the show here in Toronto on May 15. I want to see you.
Great.
I'm desperate to see you guys on stage, but
So are we, man.
yeah.
So are we, dude.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for the interview, man. Congratulations on the new release. All the best
Thanks,
in 2022. And we'll keep in touch.
And I hope we see you, man.
We will. All right.
Okay, bro.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. All right.
Have a
Take
good
care.
one. Cheers. Bye.